My name is Hector, and I am 47 years old, hailing from Puerto Rico. My soon-to-be ex-wife, Debbie, and I were married for 26 years, having been together for a total of 30. We tied the knot during our senior year of high school, when she became pregnant with our first child. Luckily, I landed a job at UPS right after graduation, although we faced many challenges in the beginning. Debbie comes from a traditional Irish family who initially disapproved of me, but over time I managed to win them over. Her father, in particular, grew fond of me. As the sole breadwinner, I made sure that Debbie did not have to work outside the home. By the time we were 27 years old, we had been blessed with 5 children, 4 girls and 1 boy. I felt fortunate that our son was born first. Our arguments were always the same: money, discipline methods, and my complaints about our lack of physical intimacy. I couldn't blame her really. With 5 children to take care of, she was constantly exhausted. I did my best to help out, but it never seemed like enough. Despite all of this, she was still my everything. Her figure was always in impeccable shape. Even though I tried to stay fit as well, my job as a delivery driver for years had left me with what some would call a skinny, fat physique, defined arms and legs, but a flabby stomach. My hairline had receded into a horseshoe shape, prompting me to shave it off entirely. But despite all my imperfections, Debbie was still my everything. There were times when she could be verbally abusive towards me, and sometimes I would finally reach my breaking point and lash back. But then she would turn into a cry bully and I would just give up, realizing that she was still my everything and that's all that mattered. As the years passed, my wife and I found ourselves as the only married couple left in our once tight-knit group of friends. It was a lonely position to be in, as each of our 7 married friends succumbed to divorce. Infidelity seemed to be the common cause, with 5 wives straying from their husbands and 1 husband straying from his wife. The 7th couple's split was due to the wife friend zoning her own husband, a concept that baffled me to say the least. I tried to keep my wife away from her newly single friends, fearing their influence on our marriage. But every time I brought it up, she would accuse me of controlling her and treating her like a prisoner or a living sex doll. I never saw myself as such, but apparently my wife had been harboring deep resentments towards me over the years. My children also took notice of their mother's change in behavior. I recall coming home one day to find my son and 2 daughters arguing with their mother. As much as I understood their frustration, I scolded them for raising their voices at their mother. Later, when we were alone, my wife revealed that even our own children saw her as nothing more than a slave in our household. Confused and taken aback, I asked her where these thoughts were coming from. But she shut down and walked away, leaving me feeling lost and betrayed by both my spouse and my own family. The memories of D-Day still haunt me to this day. Debbie, my wife, had gone out with her group of friends for the evening. As usual, I was in the kitchen preparing dinner while our children were engrossed in watching the movie train to Busan. Suddenly, my 3 oldest children appeared in the kitchen with a worried expression on their faces. I assumed they were just checking on the food, but then my son spoke up and told me that they suspected their mother of having an affair. My initial reaction was disbelief, followed by anger and denial. In a fit of rage, I shouted at them and promised to prove them wrong. With trembling hands, I opened the Where's My Phone app and saw that she was indeed at a bar on the outskirts of town. Without another thought, I quickly made my way to my truck and sped off towards the location. As I pushed through the crowded bar, my eyes searched for her among the sea of bodies. Finally, I spotted her circle of friends in the corner booth, their laughter and drunken antics filling the air. But when I approached them, they all turned pale and a sinking feeling hit my stomach. My heart raced as I stepped outside and walked around the dimly lit parking lot, searching for any sign of her. That's when I saw it, a car parked in the back corner with a lone figure slumped in the driver's seat. For a moment, I thought it was my friend until I got closer and saw that he was receiving oral pleasure from someone who definitely wasn't his wife. My rage surged as I recognized the woman's face. It was Debbie, my own wife. Without thinking, I smashed my fist through the window and dragged him out of the car, unleashing all of my pent-up anger on him. Debbie's pleas and apologies fell on deaf ears as I yelled at her while kicking him over and over again. It wasn't until the flashing lights of police cars arrived that I realized what a terrible mistake I had made in my fit of blind rage. As they arrested me for assault and battery, I couldn't help but feel like everything had been ripped away from me in that one moment of betrayal. My time in county stretched on for a week and a half, each day dragging on like an eternity. In the infirmary, I lay in bed, clutching my chest, certain that I was having a heart attack. But as it turned out, the doctors discovered that I was suffering from broken heart syndrome, a physical manifestation of the emotional turmoil I had endured. The news of my crime, of what I had done to land myself in this place, spread through the prison like wildfire, reaching even my father-in-law. And to my surprise, he showed up one day and bailed me out. The man practically broke down in tears when I stepped through those gates, showering me with apologies for his daughter's actions and taking full responsibility for them. As we drove home, he explained that he had spoken to my manager and union representative about the situation and assured me that my job was safe. He also revealed that the kids had been staying with him during my absence and that Debbie was waiting for me at home. He knew all along what was going to happen, which is why he brought the truck to take us back together as a family. And in that moment, I realized how lucky I was to have such a loving and forgiving father-in-law by my side. As we finally arrived at the house, Debbie came running towards me, her face contorted in tears. She reached out for a hug, but in my anger, I pushed her away with such force that she stumbled and fell to the ground. The look of shock on her face only fueled my rage. With trembling hands, I told her that I wanted her to gather all of her belongings and leave our home. The word divorce hung heavily in the air between us. Debbie tried to protest and fight back, but eventually her father intervened and convinced her to comply. Once they were gone, my mother-in-law appeared with the kids in tow. Tears streamed down my face as I hugged each of them tightly, grateful for their presence in this chaotic moment. Even my mother-in-law, who had always been distant towards me, offered sincere apologies for her daughter's actions before leaving us alone to sort through the aftermath. In that moment, all I could do was hold on to my family and pray for a better tomorrow. Despite the betrayal and heartbreak, my state required mandatory couples counseling before granting a divorce. I couldn't believe it. Why should I have to go through counseling if she was the one who cheated? In the beginning of our sessions, I just sat there, my mind elsewhere as she droned on. Her words were like meaningless dribble, trying to shift the blame onto me for being a young parent and not giving her enough freedom or excitement in life. She got carried away with the idea of a wild lifestyle, egged on by her friends. And then she started a fling, feeling like she was missing something in our marriage. As if that wasn't enough, the counselor even tried to make it my fault, telling me I should have let her spread her wings once in a while and see things from her perspective. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Was this woman smoking crack? It was infuriating and ridiculous to suggest that I was at fault for my wife's actions. Debbie's tears streamed down her face as she confessed that she had been cheating on me for 4 months. She pleaded with me, saying he was the only one and it had been a mistake. I couldn't believe what I was hearing, but my mind was racing with questions. Who initiated the physical intimacy between them? How many times did they engage in sexual acts? Did she willingly perform oral sex and swallow? Did they have unprotected intercourse? Did they sleep together after? Despite my counselor's attempts to interrupt, I raised my finger to silence her. My thoughts were consumed with images of our past, the laughter, conversations, and intimate moments. How could there have been no signs of her sadness or anger? It felt like we were living in a lie. When I finally found my voice, I unleashed all of my anger and hurt onto Debbie. I called her every degrading name in the book and told her she was tainted in my eyes. The counselor tried to correct me, but I shut her down. How could they expect me to just forgive and forget everything? It was as if they didn't care about my feelings at all. They just wanted me to apologize for making Debbie feel like a servant, and with that thought, I stormed out of the room. For the past 2 years, Debbie and I have been locked in a bitter, contested divorce. It has been an uphill battle, with each of us stubbornly clinging to our own beliefs and desires. Despite the passage of time, Debbie is still desperately trying to make things right between us, constantly reaching out and trying to get us back together. But for me, those conversations are strictly about logistics and our children. Any mention of our past or potential reconciliation leads to me hanging up on her. Our family gatherings are tense and uncomfortable, with me doing everything I can to avoid Debbie or not showing up at all. Even my eldest children refuse to talk to their mother, deeply hurt by her actions during the divorce proceedings. I've tried to encourage them to spend time with her, but they adamantly refuse, and I have chosen to respect their wishes. Meanwhile, my in-laws continue to visit me weekly, silently pleading for their daughter to come to her senses and give me the divorce I so desperately want. My mother-in-law has become particularly hostile towards Debbie, calling her names like a dumb brat and spreading gossip about her amongst their congregation. It got so bad that I had to ask her to stop, not wanting our personal issues to become fodder for small-town gossip. This entire ordeal has been emotionally taxing and exhausting for everyone involved. In the first year after my divorce, my son and daughter took it upon themselves to create a Tinder account for me. At the time, I thought it was ridiculous. A middle-aged man with 5 children and a dad bod had no place on a dating app. But to my surprise, I have been on over a dozen successful dates that have boosted my confidence immensely. And then I met Isabel during my court-ordered community service. She was our Habitat for Humanity supervisor, and from the moment I saw her, I was smitten. With long, flowing chestnut hair and piercing green eyes, she could easily be mistaken for Vanessa Marcil. In fact, she once won first place in a look-alike contest at a soap opera convention she attended with her daughter. It was this shared love of soaps that sparked our initial conversation, as I often watch General Hospital with my own daughters whenever I can. And now, Isabel has become not only a romantic interest, but also a source of joy for my family. My daughters immediately took to her, and even my youngest 2 seem to have formed a strong bond with her. However, there are still complications. Debbie, my ex-wife, stubbornly clings to the hope of us getting back together and has even started telling our children that it will eventually happen. Her father has suggested therapy for her, but all I want is for this situation to finally be over and for everyone involved to find happiness in their own way. Despite the ups and downs, I cherish the years I spent with Debbie. We created a beautiful family together, raising 5 incredible children. I poured my heart and soul into building a life for her and our family. But as much as I love my kids, I can't help but feel regret over how our marriage ended. All those 26 years we shared, thrown away for a fleeting affair. It's a regret that weighs heavy on me every day. I'm not ashamed to say that I hate her now. When I see her old group of friends around town, I can't help but openly refer to them as W-word and homewreckers rather than using their names. The love and respect I had for Debbie vanished when I caught her in that car, betraying everything we had built together. But despite all of this, she will always be the mother of my children. Nothing more, nothing less. And deep down, I still hope she can come to terms with that fact, because at the end of the day, our children are what truly matter in all of this mess. Update. Exhausted and drained, I sit in the stark hospital room, surrounded by the incessant beeping of machines and fluorescent lighting. My third can of Bang Energy drink sits, half empty, on the bedside table, a desperate attempt to keep my eyes open and focused. I'm here waiting for my ex to be transferred into a mental hospital, a necessary step after the traumatic events of the past week. At home, my daughters are resting peacefully. Isabel, my loyal partner and rock through all of this chaos, is curled up beside me, her small frame rising and falling with each peaceful breath. She hasn't left my side since we arrived at the hospital. My son has been with his mother since she underwent surgery, but his girlfriend, also Isabel's daughter, has been faithfully by his side during this trying time. It all began last weekend, when this nightmare first started. The week leading up had been filled with anticipation and stress as my in-laws prepared to celebrate their 55th wedding anniversary. Despite our recent breakup and finalized divorce, they had kindly extended an invitation for me to bring Isabel along to the festivities. However, since our relationship had become official, they have respectfully asked that I refrain from bringing her to family functions to avoid any potential tension, and out of respect for their wishes, I agreed. But this time, they made a special request for Isabel's presence. Over the course of the past month, my ex's behavior has become increasingly erratic. She would often get into physical altercations with her old friends, leaving one with a broken nose, another with a busted lip, and the last one shoved out of a nearby Circle K. Each time, the police were called to handle the situation, but in our small county, they simply took her to her parents' house. I pleaded with my in-laws to get her professional help and suggested taking her to the hospital for evaluation, but it only resulted in a heated argument that left me feeling defeated. Looking back, I realize I should have fought harder for her well-being. The tension and worry weighed heavily on my mind as I watched her spiral out of control. As the sun set on Saturday evening, we gathered at my in-laws' anniversary party. The mood was festive, and everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves, but I couldn't help but notice that something was off with Debbie. Her usually bright eyes were dull and her smile was forced. Concerned, I pulled her aside and for the first time ever had a genuine conversation with her. She initially tried to brush off my question about her well-being with a fake smile, but when I pressed further, she broke down in tears. Through sobs, Debbie confessed how sorry she was for her recent behavior. She couldn't understand why she didn't stand up to her old friends who pressured her into making bad decisions. Regret washed over her as she realized the damage she had caused to our family. Seeing how lovingly I interacted with our daughter, Isabel only made her miss me even more and regret not appreciating what we had. An unsettling feeling churned in my stomach as Debbie's words sank in. Before I could ask any more questions, Debbie took a deep breath and formally apologized to Isabel for her actions. She then turned to me and asked for forgiveness, acknowledging that I am a good man who deserves a good woman by his side. In that moment, I realized just how much our relationship had changed and how much healing still needed to be done. But above all, I felt grateful for this candid conversation with Debbie and hopeful for our future together as a family. As the party raged on, Debbie moved around the room with ease, stopping to chat and embrace each of our children. I watched from afar as they made peace with her, their faces softening and smiles forming. I could only imagine the words exchanged between them, but the love and forgiveness was palpable. Isabel and I were having a great time too, enjoying each other's company and even engaging in friendly conversations with Debbie. The clock struck 3 in the morning when my phone rang. My sister-in-law's panicked voice filled my ear, followed by sobs from my mother-in-law. Then, my brother-in-law's calm tone came through, explaining that Debbie had attempted to end her life and they were rushing her to the hospital. Suddenly, the night's joy and laughter came crashing down in an instant. Frantically, I stumbled out of the house in my pajamas and raced toward my car. The front door banged shut behind me, echoing in the quiet street. Isabel and our daughters didn't need to ask what had happened. My trembling voice, half sobs and gasps, painted a vivid picture for them. Their faces were contorted with fear and distress as they tried to make sense of the situation. Tears welled up in my eyes as I explained that Debbie had slit her wrists in a desperate cry for help. It was only by chance, her brother needing to use the bathroom in the middle of the night, that she had been discovered in time to save her life. As I sped towards the hospital, my mind was consumed with worry for Debbie and her well-being. But when I arrived, my in-laws were also there, their faces drawn and pale with shock. My heart clenched at the thought of them having to endure such a traumatic experience. Debbie had lost a dangerous amount of blood and was immediately taken into surgery to repair her damaged arteries. I should have called my children to let them know what was happening, but my mind was too consumed with panic and concern. It wasn't until I saw my son walking casually toward me that reality hit me like a ton of bricks. In that moment, all of my emotions came rushing forward, and I struggled to hold back tears as I told him what had happened. Without hesitation, he ran towards the operating room, where his mother's life hung in the balance. I frantically called my other children, each one already aware of the situation. My youngest had been the first to alert them, and they were rushing to meet us at the hospital. We all waited anxiously as she underwent hours of surgery, my father-in-law and I even donating our own blood to help replenish what was being lost in the process. My son, unable to participate in the procedure, observed from a nearby room, his face wrought with worry and fear. My daughters were struggling to keep it together, but my eldest seemed to be bearing the brunt of the emotional burden. She kept replaying scenarios in her mind, wondering if there was something more she could have done, something that could have prevented this. I tried to comfort her, reminding her to focus on the present rather than dwelling on the past. Meanwhile, my younger daughters paced back and forth, their nervous energy palpable in the waiting room. Finally, my son emerged from the operating room with news that she was going to be okay. As I hugged him tightly, he collapsed into my arms, overcome with emotion. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to let go and let myself cry too, but I knew I needed to remain strong for my children in this difficult time. On a somber Sunday afternoon, my mother-in-law stumbled upon the chilling evidence of her own planned departure from this world. She left behind a series of notes, one for each of her beloved grandchildren, and a thick weighted envelope for me. Inside, I discovered signed divorce papers and a tear-stained 8-page letter of apology. As I read her words, I couldn't help but feel a whirlwind of emotions, anger, confusion, sadness. The pages were filled with apologies and explanations, revealing that she was never truly unhappy in our marriage. She had simply succumbed to the pressure and manipulation of her so-called friends who branded her as a mere servant. In her final moments, she expressed deep remorse for the way she treated me and our children, as well as for her infidelity. Though it pains me to admit it, she was right in thinking that her words could never fully capture the gravity of the situation. As Debbie slowly woke from her slumber, she refused to speak, her gaze fixed on the world outside. For 2 days, she remained in this state until I finally asked about updates and how to distract myself. It was clear that she needed something to focus on. Gradually, she began to acknowledge those around her, but there was a distant look in her eyes. It almost seemed as if she was disappointed to still be alive. As the days passed, her condition didn't improve, though she became more conversational. One day, Debbie requested to speak with Isabel alone. Upon emerging from their conversation, Isabel revealed that Debbie had asked if she loved me because she could sense my love for her. Isabel confirmed that indeed she did love me and shared that I was the first man she had been with since her husband tragically died 15 years ago while serving in Afghanistan. When Debbie later asked me directly if I loved her too, I couldn't deny it. Her face lit up with happiness and contentment at my admission. Debbie sat in the sterile white room, eyes darting around nervously as she awaited her fate. The doctor's words echoed in her mind, a year, maybe 2, in this mental hospital for observation. She was no longer the wife I had devoted my heart and soul to, but she would always be the mother of our children. Despite the uncertainty and pain, I vowed to stand by her side and see her through this journey for the sake of our beloved kids. As we said our goodbyes, I couldn't help but notice the faint glimmer of hope in Debbie's tear-filled eyes, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, there is still a chance for healing and renewal. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. If you made it to the end of this video, I truly appreciate you sticking around to hear this story. It's been a roller coaster of emotions and events, and sharing it all with you has been a cathartic experience. I hope this journey can offer some insight or comfort to those who might be going through similar challenges. Before you go, please don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell if you haven't already. Your support means the world to me and helps me keep producing content that resonates with our community. Feel free to share your thoughts and stories in the comments below. I read every single one, and I'm eager to connect with you, hear your experiences, and grow together. Remember, you're not alone in your struggles. Stay tuned for more updates, and take care of yourselves and each other.